Hello, my name is Jimmy, and this is my story. So we grew up without a father. So my father was killed when I was 6. Grew up in the house, and we moved a lot. We moved from South Philly to New Jersey for a little bit, so it was a little hectic. Used to get in a lot of fights.
There was me and my two children, and as they kept getting older, I kept looking for ways to make everything perfect, and everything would be perfect. Had a nice new house, had a new car, had a great job, all that stuff, and everything seemed to get worse. I had a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old that basically were not following anything that I wanted them to do. They were just doing their own thing.
I don't think I listened to anything my mom said. I think from everywhere from, maybe before, maybe when I was like 8 years old, but like from anywhere from 12 to 15, they were pretty bad years in my life. I mean, I really just did whatever I wanted to do.
And I thank my mother for teaching me to pray from when I was a little child. But I was praying that God had to do something because I couldn't figure it out anymore. I tried all the things that the world tells you to do. Like I put them in a nice school, I moved to a nice neighborhood. There was just so many things. I went to all the psychologists that the schools recommended, tried to work everything out, and nothing worked out. And I knew there was something missing. And one morning after we had a big blowout in the house, I was driving to work, and I was just praying that God had to do something because I couldn't do it on my own anymore. I didn't have any of the answers. I didn't know what was next. And that weekend, my sister invited me to a prayer meeting. And I was a little skeptical because I grew up Catholic, wasn't like really, I didn't know what it was going to be. But after I had been going for about 3 weeks, I was sitting in a pew, and the church was in a barn. And so it wasn't like it was no stained glass windows, there was no big thing, it was just in a barn. And it came to me that this was the answer to my prayer. So God had been listening to me, and he knew that I needed help. That's where my walk with the Lord started. But then I still had these 2 kids that were rebellious, younger one even more so than the older one. He was stealing cars, he was getting into trouble, they were robbing the trains. If you told him one thing, he did absolutely the other thing. And I couldn't control them anymore because they were as tall as I was, they had their own mind.
I was probably maybe about 12. We were down in South Philly. I had a lot of friends, so we were maybe about 60 of us, and we were underneath I-95. We had stole some liquor when the guys come in and they delivered a beer. Then they go in with the forklift, and then the beer's still there because it's getting unloaded. We took all that, and I drank a 1/5 of vodka and a quart of beer. I was outside, and I just remember doing certain stupid stuff. I think I was doing push-ups in the middle of the road or something like that. And then I just blacked out. And my friends took me. My grandparents lived around the corner. So they took me around and said, hey, he's not moving and he's not responsive. And they called the hospital. And then from there, I got rushed to the hospital. I woke up in the hospital with a tube down my throat from alcohol poisoning. And they jolted me twice with the defibrillators to bring me back because I was flatlined when I got to the hospital.
But I did start to pray for him, especially Jimmy, because he was getting into all the trouble. I was of the opinion that if something didn't happen in him, he would be dead or he'd be in prison by the time he was 18, because he was going and doing all kinds of crazy things. So I wanted to have good kids. But as I walked in through my walk with the Lord, I realized I didn't want just good kids. I wanted kids that knew the Lord. And I would pray, do whatever you have to do, God, to change their hearts and make them know you and have a relationship with you. And that's a hard thing to do as a mom, because sometimes that means things that are happening are not what you want to happen. And our church went away in the summer for a week to French Creek, and they rented the cabins, which were full of spiders and things like that. So it wasn't like a comfort place, but it was fun because we were all together. And my kids would go with me, and Jimmy, being himself, like, didn't want the food that we had, didn't like what was going on, didn't pay attention to everybody, but he did like to start the fires, so they found a job for him and he did that.
I know we were talking about that prodigal son thing. That was hit me over the weekend. I guess the biggest thing with that is that the God of this whole universe, like in that story, it talked about when he saw his son afar off and not having a dad, growing up without a dad. It's powerful to me because I never had that father. And when he sees him afar off, it's not that he just says, oh, there he is. He just drops everything and he runs. And he runs to his son. And that really, it really stands out to me. I mean, it's really, being a father now for children, you know, you do everything for your kids. I mean, you want to be, and if the God of the universe, it wasn't something I qualified for. And like, I think right now, what was hard for me was I started seeing that nothing I could do could gain me, he wanted to call me son. And it wasn't something I could muster up. It wasn't a title I had. It wasn't a talent I had. It wasn't that I did all these things right. It's, God said, I'm going to do a work in you. And like, I almost like, now I look back and I say, like Moses, he chose Moses. He might not have been able to speak clearly, but that's who he chose. He chose David, like he might have been the smallest, or, I mean, there's times where God chooses someone. It's not based on their past, or it's not based on what they think they're qualified to do.
We had just come from there, and I went to my sister's. We were helping her move. She just moved into her house, and he watched the video, and it was talking about the broad and the narrow road, and it was about rock music and stuff, and listening to that, and it was definitely a gospel message for someone. So on our way home from my sister's, I'm driving, and he goes, how do you know when you're saved? So I almost like fell out of the car because it was like crazy, because this was not what I was ever expecting to come out of his mouth. And I was like dumbfounded. We'll see. And then when I got him back to home, and I took him to the church that I've been going to, and it was like a community, and there were the guys there that have been talking to him and helping him and working with him for years. They got together with him.
Just like starting to see, like, where would I go, or what would happen to me if I died? Because at that time I really didn't have a fear of. I just was fearless. I'd just go out and do whatever I wanted to do. But I think at that time it started to hit me that there was like I could be hurt, or I could die, or something like that. I mean, so I think that started to arouse like something like that. I could actually, there's consequences to what I'm doing, or something like that.
And God was working, and I wanted God to do a deep work there. I didn't want it to be, okay, everything's good now, you're okay. I wanted God to do something really deep in him, so that it would be there for his life. They called me at work that afternoon, and I talked with him. He gave his life to the Lord, and that was the beginning of a transformed child. I know a lot of people know him now. If you knew him then, you would not want to hang out with him, and you wouldn't want to be with him. But God did a major, major transformation in his life. And that was really important to me.
I started to see that God was real. It was a real thing in my mom's life, and that she really cared for me. Like, I think that was where I started to realized I might not agreed with her, but I realized that what she was doing was something authentic. So leading up to that, I would say like a lot of the things, I think it was like a broad scope of a lot of things coming together, like where through that thing of like almost dying, or actually dying, and having a bunch of other things that were like through stealing cars and doing like coming close to dying there. I think it was a lot of stuff all together. I actually did read a couple scripture verses in that Bible, and the one that stood out to me was, what shall profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? And what shall he give in exchange for his soul? And at that time I had like 3 stolen cars. I was like a lot of popularity. I had a lot of things, but I didn't have, like, it started to hit to me like, well, is this what I'm trading my life for? And then I think at that time, I started looking at different things, and I started seeing how I was affecting a lot of the people around me that loved me. And that's where it started hurting there, I think that.
You could have a conversation with him. He was looking to see what he could do with his life. He was like he was, I always think back when he was a young child, like 4 or 5 years old. He was the sweetest, and he was a really good kid at that point, and loving and caring, and he went back to being that. And all those, it just was like all the craziness of the years that we went through and the things we went through all went away.
I guess it was more than just an outer change. It was like, I guess I had realized I had a purpose for living. And before, I think it was chasing after something else that wasn't going to satisfy. And then after I got a hold of that, I think it just changed right from the inside out, like what God was doing. And he had a purpose for my life.
Never give up, and know that God loves that child more than you even love them, and that he wants to do something there. And sometimes we have to look for what God wants to do in their life as opposed to what we want. Just having a successful kid and a good kid, to me, is not always what you want. You want someone who has a relationship with God and is sold out for God. When they do anything in their life, that's what their first thing is. What does God want me to do? And where does God want me to be? And then go on there. But I do know that nothing is impossible with God. And the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. So there's strongholds that God can pull down, and we have to believe that. And that there's nobody that God can't reach, and he wants to reach everybody. So I would say never give up, and look for ways for God to use you, and pray for other people to come into their life, or pray for them to have dreams or thoughts or things, to let God know that he's there for them.
Well, I would say on another note of that would be, there's hard choices you had to make. And I know my mom made some hard choices in that. The love, I felt the love, and the intercession of not giving up and believing what, even if you don't see it with your eyes. But there was times like when I missed like 110 days of school year, like we had to go to court case, and they basically told us that the judge flat out asked my mom, can you get him to school? And my mom basically said, no, I can't. So she was honest, like she's like, I can't get him to school. And then the judge is like, well, I'll make sure he gets to school. And I left in cuffs and hand bracelets, and they took me to a shelter for like about almost 2 months. Month and a half? Yeah, they transported me to school. So there was tough decisions that she had to make that actually showed the love. Like, and then I don't think I seen it at the point. I was like, what are we talking? Like, what do you mean? But those were times that there were hard decisions as a mom or a dad to make that were the right ones to say, hey, you had to make a change.
That I love them, and I'm proud of them, and I'm just happy to be able to be with him in life and do this life together.
Yeah, I would say I hope I have that same love and intercession for my children, like what was represented and what my mom showed me. I feel like I'm learning to be a dad also now. Not having a dad, I'm kind of learning that all over. And not that my mom was my dad, but I'm learning stuff that she went through. I think it's a continual journey that we go through. And just saying, believing that, hey, when God makes a promise, like, you can take hold of it and believe it. I think our stories don't end at at conversion. I think God has constantly been there, and there's certain things in life that are not easy to go through, and then there's things that you can't change, and there's things that to know that God's going to be with you in those circumstances. We've been through a lot of different things, even after you get married, even after you have children, even after you go to do missionary work and all. I really was thankful for my mom when we lost our first son, that she was able to be there for my wife too. And there was times that there's times in your life you don't have the words to say. Like when we went into that doctor's appointment and they said they couldn't find a heartbeat, it was like, there's times in your life there's going to be that just being there for the person is going to be, that's all you need to be at that moment. You don't have to fix, you don't have to have all the answers, but just being there. And I think my mom, I'm thankful because she was able to be there for Kelly and other things in my life.
I'm Pat.
I'm Jimmy, and this is our story.